Hello and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm Jason Paul. Now, in this next conversation, I really found that it warmed my heart, and there were so many similarities between the guest's background and my background. And actually, some of what was discussed was so profound, it's really got me thinking for a number of days afterwards. So this really is a must listen to episode. So without further ado, prepare to be dazzled and inspired as we introduce today's extraordinary guest, Ellen Edmondson. She's the brilliant author behind the transformative masterpiece, A Place of Love and Light. This book has been hailed as a divinely written masterpiece of love, and its profound impact is undeniable. Ellen's journey and her mission is nothing short of remarkable, and her presence promises to leave you in awe. In the pages of A Place of Love and Light, Ellen takes you on a transformative voyage of self-discovery, inviting you to boldly step into your true self in a world demanding conformity. Ellen's book is a radiant beacon of hope, wisdom, and divine love, designed to expand your awareness, deepen your spiritual connection, and ignite your life's purpose. With thought-provoking scriptures, inspirational quotes, reflective questions, and transformative exercises, Ellen's words will resonate with your soul on a profound level. Her book answers age-old questions about strengthening your relationship with your higher source, deepening your connection with your soul's wisdom, and embracing your authentic self. The book really inspires you to ponder your contribution to humanity and the world, and ultimately the significance of your presence here. Now, Ellen is more than just an author. She's a messenger of love, hope, comfort, and healing. As a medium, spirit artist, and intuition coach, she has dedicated her life to offering guidance, clarity, and support to those on their soul's journey. Ellen's belief in the power of unconditional love, the pursuit of joy, and a life of service shines through in her every word and action. Now, not only is Ellen a beacon of light for adults seeking spiritual insight, but she has also founded the highly intuitive kids community, providing invaluable support for families and caregivers of highly intuitive children. Her commitment to making a positive impact extends to being a guest speaker on various podcasts and sharing her story on platforms like the A&E Psychic Kids Show and Inside Edition Digital. Ellen Edmondson's journey from a successful government career to a spiritual path is a testament to the transformative power of following one's calling. Her spiritual awakening in 2013, marked by unique and undeniable experiences, led her down a path of self-discovery and acceptance. From automatic writing and communicating with the deceased to speaking in light language, her gifts blossomed in astonishing ways. Ellen's passion and purpose are woven into the very fabric of her being. She has made it her life's work to offer solace and support, reminding us that love is eternal and that love never dies, and that each of us has a beautiful soul with a unique purpose and a divine light. So today we really are privileged to hear her story, her wisdom, and her heart. I'm really excited for you to listen to this conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. So Ellen, thank you for joining me on the Soul Sync podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Now, people have heard in the introduction all about you, but I want to delve straight in because there's so much we can talk about in this hour that we've got together. But first of all, tell us about your backstory, because it's fascinating. 16 years in a very successful federal career, and then everything started to change. Tell us about your story.
Well, sure. Yes, I did spend 16 years working in the federal government in DC, Washington, DC, here in capital of the United States. But I had a normal upbringing. I grew up as Catholic. So, my whole delve into spirituality was through religion, and having that as my foundation. My mother was a very devout Catholic, and so we come from a large family. We came up that way. So I came up not really. I had experiences when I was younger, but I didn't know what they were. Like I could sense and I knew things and I just experienced things, but I never talked about it because growing up Catholic, you don't talk about these kind of mystical experiences where I didn't really see, I wasn't clairvoyant, but I just knew things and could feel things. And I was very clairaudient. I could hear things, but I didn't know what it was. I just was like, my angels are talking to me, or somebody's, just didn't think anything of it. But as I grew and I went off to college, and out of undergrad, I got my job in the federal government. I was there for 16 years. But the thing that I realized on how my intuitive abilities helped me in that career was I started young, 22, right out of undergrad. I worked for 16 years, but I went from the entry level all the way up to a senior executive in that time. I was a senior executive by the age of 36 years old. And most people here don't hit that level until they're in their 50s. But the one thing I realized during my climb up the ladder was I just knew things. I could just put strategies together. I could see patterns. I could make business decisions. I would have people come back to me and say, you said that 6 months ago and it happened, or you said that 3 weeks ago, or how do you know this? I always just called it, I just have good gut instincts. But looking back on it, I realized that it was my intuition, my intuitive abilities where I was making connections, and I was using that in a way that just helped me to know how to be business savvy and make decisions. And my gift of empathy, it was almost like I could tell what other people were thinking and feeling. So even if somebody wanted to outmaneuver me in a situation, I could figure out how to work around it.
Do you know what? That's fascinating that you were tapping into that and it propelled you forwards. And actually, when you were just talking about that, I just got goosebumps because I'm now 36 and own a company that has done very well. And it's my ability. I've learned to use my intuition and it can propel you. Do you know what? It just shows you, doesn't it, that if you tap into that, the possibilities are endless. I had to interlude there because that's a fascinating part of your story.
Well, and that is absolutely true. And that's something that I talk to people and I do coach people and I work with folks in that. But that's a topic of conversation, is that we all have this innate ability to tap into this intuition. We all can feel, we get those nudges, we get those impressions, we get those thoughts and feelings. We all have it. Some of us have it to a heightened degree when you start talking about mediumship and other, psychic abilities and that kind of thing. But we all have it. It's just whether you listen to it, whether you follow it, whether you recognize it and you trust it. And when you trust it, it's almost like you get the breadcrumbs of life to your best life laid out before you if you listen and act on them. And
so sorry, carry on.
Sure.
I was going to say, so you had this at a young age. You grew up in that background. Was you aware that you were getting some kind of what was you putting it down to at the time when all this was kind of unfolding and propelling you forwards?
Well, because I grew up Catholic and in the Christianity, I just always equated it to, for me, I just said God was talking to me. I just always said God is leading me, and I'm just going to follow. I'm going to listen. And I don't know, at a young age, I just felt very tapped into spirituality and that there was something bigger guiding me. And whether you call it God, or some people that may have another terminology if they want to use it, higher source, universe, higher power. But it's that invisible, loving, divine energy that is constantly guiding us and showing us to our best path if we choose to follow those nudges and inspirations and the synchronicities and the things that happen that are actually always taking us there. It's just whether we pay attention to it and tap into it or not. And that's what I found looking back on it. That's what was always leading and guiding me and helped me to move up the career ladder so quickly when I was in my business background.
I guess as well, I think you just said something that made me think. The fact that you had something to put your faith in, because from your upbringing, the fact that you'd put your faith in God, I guess I grew up in very much a non-religious household. So I had nothing to necessarily say someone's guiding me, a higher good, a higher force or something. So I guess the fact that you had that kind of belief system was enough to allow you to tap into your intuition because you were focusing your energy on something. Hello, it's me, Jason Paul. I'm sorry to interrupt your episode for just a moment to ask a brief favour. If you like listening to The Soul Sync, please do leave me a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your feedback really does mean the world to me, and it also ensures that I can continue to bring world-class speakers onto The Soul Sync. Thanks for all your support. I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Yes, I would say that's true. And I say it's there for everyone, even if you don't grow up with a religious or in a religion. But if you can understand that you have all of us, you still get these nudges and gut instincts and impressions. It's because you're always, whether you recognize it or not, or whether you know it about it or not, consciously or unconsciously, it's always there, something guiding and leading you. And it's just whether you trust. First, it starts with trusting yourself. And when you trust yourself, you're connecting and you know yourself. That's that place. It goes into that place where you connect with that greater good that's around you, that's leading you and guiding you. Because we're all put here to live our best lives. No one is not. It's just whether you recognize how you can tap into how we're being led by that greater good that's constantly calling us forward to our best. And to wanting us to make those decisions. And you're right. For me, having had that basis of a religion and growing up with an understanding there was a higher power, a higher source, God, for the label that I put on that was leading me and guiding me, that's how I stayed tapped into it. But I think we all, even if you don't grow up with a religion or with that ideology, you can still you will still get there at some point in your life. You still get there because I believe people always start to search for a bigger meaning, purpose, path. Why am I here? What am I meant to do? And you start searching for that answer. And that ties you into that greater good that is calling you forward to find that purpose, path, and mission for yourself.
Well, I think exactly that. For me, I think you've just described exactly my situation. I went on this 10-year journey from having no money, being in piles of debt, to thinking that the answer to everything was success, money, career. And then I got to the point where I built a multi-million-pound company. And one day I just stopped and I thought, what the hell am I doing this all for? This makes no sense. You're born, you build up, you die. This just doesn't make sense. What am I doing this for? So I can relate to that a lot. So to go back to the story then, you're kind of at the height of your career, working in government, and then tell us where you went from there.
And I'm going to piggyback just what you said, Jason. I made it up to the senior executive level at 36 years old. I was traveling all over the world, not the world, all over the country. I was I was executive director of certain organizations. I had managed up to 169 people with my co-managed with another boss in 3 different locations. And by the time I left, I had my own staff of 40. I was a controller. So you can't get into any more left brain profession away from right brain intuitiveness than I was. And that's where I kept feeling so pulled and so stretched. And I was like, this is not resonating with me. Just like you said, I hit that level. What is this all for? I felt like I was meant to do something more. There was a bigger purpose. I wanted to do something more meaningful. That was nice what I was doing, but I was like, I had the money, prestige and all. I was like, but I didn't feel internally fulfilled, purpose, path. I didn't feel spiritually. I just felt that I needed to go to a different way. So I just decided, I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I felt like when I was going in, I was giving a piece of my soul away every day because I lost the joy in what I was doing. And I said I would never work in a job where I felt like I was giving a piece of myself away and just being complacent and comfortable, because I knew that I needed to do something that was more meaningful. So I left. I just quit.
I can so relate to that because I feel like that sometimes. I feel like I'm, when I do podcast work and this type of work, I feel like my soul is being nurtured. Then sometimes I feel like the Monday to Friday, I feel like do you know the best way to describe it is it doesn't feel where I belong. It feels like it's a means to an end, or I feel like it's provided me with the means to do the stuff I'm passionate about. So I'm kind of in that tassel. And it's funny because I've started describing it as what my soul needs. And that's only a recent thing. If you'd have told me like this time last year, I'd be using those sorts of phrases, I'd have probably laughed at you, Ellen. So, so tell us more about the story. How did you, because even the decision to leave what you'd, that is everything you'd known, at the height of your career. So what prompted you to start thinking, hang on a minute, this isn't, working for me anymore?
Well, because I just decided I had to do it. And when you're in the federal government, in Washington, D.C., and there's always politics and there's just a lot of dynamics with managers. At that time, I had a boss who came in that we just her way of doing things was not in alignment with mine. When I rose up the ladder, I always did it through the fact that it was kindness and compassion. That was one thing I have to say. People told me, they were like, you're one of the kindest, nicest managers. I led people with heart-centered leadership is what I called it. That's how I focus. And my people were my biggest assets, and I treated them that way. And this particular boss came in and didn't see it that way. And we just knocked heads. And it just got to a point I was like, you know what? Just like what you said, Jason, it wasn't feeding my soul anymore at that point. And I walked out. I gave my 2 weeks notice. I quit. I had a home. I was not married at the time. I had a mortgage. I had cards. I had everything. I had financial obligations. But I said, you know what? Feeding my soul and me feeling whole and looking at myself in the mirror and being true to myself is more important. And I believe in my abilities and what I can do, and because of my faith, that God will carry me. So I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to believe the net will appear. And I did. I walked out.
And then what happened? So in the immediate after days of you doing that, what did you then do? Where did you go? What? Well, that's a big move. You're giving your notice in this high government job because your soul feels that it needs it. And then I just can't imagine what you then sat down and what was the thought process in where do you go now?
Well, at that time, and this is where it's funny because you look at your life and you look at those synchronicities and how things happen. So when I quit because I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And so I ended up before that. And it's kind of like life is nudging you. And you can tell when you start feeling like, when you start feeling unease, or if people get illnesses, or if you start feeling just like this tug of war, you're not feeling at peace internally. And I always go by peace inside. If I'm not feeling at peace, then I have to make a change. Well, earlier that year, so I left in September of 2005. Earlier that year, because I was working the hours I was working like 14-hour days and I was traveling, all these things. So I rose up the ladder very quickly. I never made time to really have a personal life. And that was one of the things. I was like, in this lifetime, I want to be a wife and a mother. And I can't do that. I'm 36 and I'm working all these hours and everything. So that's why I was feeling this pull, because my soul and what I really wanted in life wasn't being fed. Well, earlier that year, and because I never had time to have a personal life, and this isn't something I would have ever thought of doing, my family just thought I was crazy. I went out and I was like, you know what? And I felt a nudge that I followed. Totally not me, but I just got this impression. Put your profile out on Match.com. And so I joined a dating site and I put my profile out there in January of that year. And it was like 3 months later, I met this gentleman who's now 17 years later, my husband. Put my profile out. And 3 months later, we had talked maybe twice on the phone in like April. And we ended up going on a date. We had never met. But he decided to take me, if I can go into the story a little bit, I think.
Please do.
So we hadn't met face to face, but we corresponded a little bit. And so just by phone talked. So he's like, I would like to take you out. He knew from my profile, I like theater plays. So he said, I want to take you up to New York to see The Lion King on Broadway, and for our first date. And as it got closer, and I said, okay, we'll do that. But as it got closer, I started thinking, I've never met this gentleman. I had my mother and family were like, you've never met this person. You're going to go a couple states away with this gentleman? And I started thinking about it. I was like, well, he wanted to drive. I was like, nope, no driving. I'll take the train because I can get away if you're a weirdo. I can get to go back home by myself without you. Or, if anything comes up. So, and at the last minute, I was like, oh, I'm not feeling this. I don't want to do this. I'm not comfortable because we haven't met to go some states away to go see a play. And he said, well, I ordered the tickets late. And he said, and when they sent me the tickets, I ordered two, but they actually sent me four. And he said, when I ordered the tickets, I told the gentleman, he's like, you're such an angel. I'm trying to get this at the last minute to impress this woman. And I need these tickets, but you're such an angel that you said I could get seats there. So, but he sent him four tickets instead of two. So the day before, and I didn't know this, he didn't tell me this. The day before we were going to go, I called to tell him I wasn't comfortable and I wasn't going to go. And he's like, oh, no, don't back out. Look, I'll tell you what. They sent me four tickets instead of two. So I'll let you can bring two of your friends with you to make you comfortable, because I really like to go out with you. So my husband, who became my husband, took out three women he didn't know on his first date to take me out. And we went up to New York to see the Lion King, had dinner, and come back on that day.
I wonder if you'd have gone along with it, would he have told you why there were two empty seats next to you?
But you know what he said he was going to do when he got there with those two extra tickets? He said, I was planning on just giving them away as a gift to somebody on the street.
Oh, that's
And see, he was that kind of a nice guy with that kind of heart. And I was like, okay. So after we did, but the thing was, it was so funny because it kind of goes back to synchronicities and things happening. Because he got four tickets, I would have canceled and we wouldn't have gone if he hadn't had those two extra tickets. And he said he told the gentleman, you're an angel for helping me get these tickets to go out with this woman. And so everything just kind of lined up. And after we had that date, we met in April. We went on our first date in April 2005. And we were married April of 2006, 1 week shy of us knowing each other a year. But it was like it just clicked.
Do you know what? On the subject of synchronicity, something that I've just noticed since you've been talking is I'm 36, and 36 was the age that you went off on that journey and decided, and I'm having those. This is always these sorts of things do make me laugh to myself, because I think to myself, now that's very that's the synchronicity. So you. So tell us where you went from the point that you left your job, and then, because there's in your story, I know in 2013, 8 years after you made the decision, something very pivotal happened in your life. Tell us about kind of that kind of what am I trying to say? That period of your life.
Okay. So after my husband and I got married, then we ended up, I went to support him at his dental practice because he's a dentist. And then 4 years later, we had a son. So at that point, when I had my son, that's when things shifted for me. And I started feeling a real shift because I feel those 8 years in between there was just me, because I always wanted to be a wife and mother, was kind of getting settled into that stage of my life. And after I got settled in that stage of life and we ended up having our son, it was 3.5 months after he was born that my mother passed away. And that was very hard for me, because my mother and I were extremely close. And she had been sick at times, but she did really well up until I had my son. And it was at that time when she passed away is when I started noticing things a little differently. One instance let's talk about that I described in the book is what, after she passed, my son's little toys, like, Elmo loves you, the little musical toys and lights, they would just start going off around the house. And my husband and I would just look at each other and it's like, nobody's even near the toy, and it just starts going off. Or the lights would start to flicker, or the radios would turn on and off. And this happened for 8 months after my mother passed away. But I knew it was her. And actually, I'll back up. Even like a few days after she passed, I was feeding my son at night, and I felt her presence just come in and start talking to me. Like I was reverberating. I never had that experience before. Like in my solar plexus, I never had, but I knew she and I were so close.
You just knew that feeling. That's my mum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's her. And she was communicating with me. But for 8 months that happened, lights, toys, everything going off. But I didn't know what was going on. I was just, and I would go to sleep at night and I could see her like standing right there, right in front of me, like she was real. And I started getting scared because I didn't know what was going on. And so after about this 8 month period, oh, and I have to tell you one other quick story. My husband and I were talking one time in our living room. We had a picture up on the mantle, and we were talking about right after she passed on whether we were going to go forward with this family get together that she wanted to have. That picture that was up on the mantle, it didn't just fall right down in front of the mantle, it flew into the middle of the floor. And my husband and I looked at each other and we said, okay, I guess we're going forward. Mom wants us to go forward with having this event. We've never had experiences like that before, but her presence was so strong. She was moving objects and turning on lights and flashing things and setting things off. And so after that 8 month period, I went to sleep one night and she came to me like she always did, standing right there in a dream. And she said, Ellen, I know I'm scaring you and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go and you'll be okay and I'll be around. And after I had that dream.
How did that make you feel? Because almost I'd be thinking, well, I don't want you to go away.
She said, I'll go away, but I'll be around.
Okay.
So I took that as, and then I didn't know how to take that dream, but after I had that dream, everything stopped in the house, all the activity. So the lights stopped flashing, the toys stopped going off, everything. I didn't see her in my dream like she was standing right there anymore. But it's just, I just felt like I knew she was around me. So I guess she made her transition fully to not have to be there to physically move things for me to know she was there, but she just left me with this knowing she was around.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Jason, can I tell you, at that point, I still didn't know that I had these abilities at that point. So that was kind of like a little opening of like, wow, but I still didn't know what to do. It's just like, okay, was just something that happened.
And then where did you go from there? What happened after? I'm gripped, Ellen, this story. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Well, after that, because I was grieving so hard and I had my son was only 3 months old. I was just, wrapped up in that, just trying to get through my grief. My whole world changed because I was still heavily a caregiver for my mom at that point. And now I had to figure all that, but I had my little infant baby. But I said he was my saving grace, because just taking care of that sweet, beautiful little face, so I focused all on him and just trying to self-care. So that was 2010. 2013. So this was me just trying to self-care and work through my grief. I started doing back then in like 2012 or so, Oprah and Deepak were doing those 21-day meditation challenges.
Yes.
And I was, so they were offering all of those, and I love Oprah's shows, and so I started doing them. I was like, well, let me do this. This will be a chance for me just to have some wind down time. I started meditating and started doing each one of their challenges. But the first one I did, it just brought me a sense of peace and a sense of comfort. And I think too, because when I was meditating, it was also helping me to feel more connected to my mom, because I was going inward, getting quiet and connecting to that something bigger outside of myself. But what I didn't realize was that really laid the foundation and helped open up these abilities that were going to come out later. And so I was doing that in the fall of 2012, these meditation challenges. And then in January of 2013, that's when it was beginning of January. It was like a 9-day period. I just had this big shift and this big awakening like I hadn't experienced before. It was just really, to me, it was like, oh my gosh, what's going on with me? But I had gone to the library to pick up a book, and I happened to walk by the metaphysical section in the library. And I'm just a person, you can see, I'm an avid learner. I love books.
So, you've got a beautiful collection. I can see them. They're very nice.
Yeah, I love books. So I went to get a different book, but I walked by the metaphysical section, and all of a sudden I was just drawn. It was like this book just brought me right into it. And
what was the book? Oh, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it was because this book was just like, wow, Raymond Buckland's Book of Spirit Communications. So older book, but I was just drawn to that immediately. And so I was like, okay. And I always said, like what we talk about, those nudges, I always said books and information picked me. I always felt like I was being guided. But that book, I was like, I'm open to getting it. Next, a couple shelves down, there were 2 books on automatic writing. I didn't know what automatic writing was. So I picked up those things. I'm like, okay, I'm just feeling like I need them. I'll take them home. So that evening I went home, put my little baby to bed. I picked up the Book of Spirit Communications, and it happened to open it up to automatic writing. And I started reading what automatic writing was. And as I was reading about it, I'm left-handed. My left hand just started moving like on its own, because I know I was like, I'm not consciously trying to do. My hand started moving, and I'm thinking as I'm reading what it is, and I'm like, my hand's moving. I'm not doing that. I was like, okay, let me go get a pen and paper. So I went and got a pen and paper and put my left hand, put the pen like it described in the book, and my hands just started and not moving. I think just started moving and making circles and all these things. I'm like, ooh, what's going on? I'm just thinking, this is weird. This is really strange. I feel like I'm like, something obviously is trying to communicate, or something is going on. So started happening. So I'm like, okay. This happened for like 2 days, 3. My hand would just start moving on its own. My arm would start jerking and my hand moving. I'd go get a pen and paper and just start making scribbles. And after like the second day, little words, letters started to form, little sentences that I knew I wasn't doing started coming out. And I'm like, okay, this is really strange. And at that point, and I would always, when my son was playing with his little toys, or he was in his playpen or something, he would happen to be this particular time he was out playing with his toys. I went to another room because I didn't let him see my hand moving around like that. But he came toddling into the room at one point, and he grabbed my hand, and my left hand, he held it up. He said, "What's wrong, Mom?" in his little baby language. "What's wrong with your hand, Mom? Your hand broke?" And at that moment, I looked, I was like, how does he know there's something going on with me? He was in the other room. So I didn't think of, I was
Oh,
just
goodness.
like, that's strange.
This story, Ellen, it is absolutely fascinating.
So that was just like, okay, wow. So that was like a little flip right there. But after like 2 days, it kept going on. Little sentences started forming. Then at one point, I go up on the 3rd day to go start typing, check my emails on the computer. And all of a sudden, my hands was like energy shot out of my fingertips. They're going superhuman speed across the keyboards. I'm just typing all these random letters and numbers and all these things just coming. I'm like, I'm not controlling this. It's just coming out of my hands. What's going on? So I'm just going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So I'm typing. This happened for about another 2 days or so. And then words started forming. Somebody was typing through me. I started making a connection. Somebody's communicating, using me, working through me. And so that started happening. But I was like, okay, I need to tell my husband what's going on. I got a 2-year-old, and I'm getting all these body sensations, all these things happening to me. And so I let him know. I told him that what happened, and I was like, I don't know, he's going to take this, but he was just like, okay. So, and then he started seeing when I was talking about like with the typing and the writing, he started watching what was going on. But one night he went out to walk the dog. When he went out to walk, I was typing, but I felt stuck. I stopped and my head went back, and I could feel shifting in my voice box, in my throat. And I'm like, okay. And I couldn't move. And I was like, what's going on? So when he came back in to check on me, this voice just came out of me, and I started trance communications. Someone just started talking to my husband, and they told him that it was like a collective, like of angels that were communicating with him. They had this conversation with him. And after I came down from it, I was like, I don't know. This is the craziest thing. I don't know what's happening with me. And I was kind of scared, but not scared, because I didn't have a frame of reference for any of it.
Mm.
So I was just like, okay. So my husband and he's like, Ellen, because I kept telling him, I was like, am I going cuckoo berries? What's going on? I don't know if I'm going cuckoo berries. And he's like, no, he's like, you're the most practical, logical person I know. You're not going cuckoo berries. We need to figure this out. But it was after that point, it was 9 days. I went from automatic writing, automatic typing, speaking in trance. And then I was also started speaking a language we didn't understand. I called it speaking in tongues. People now refer to it as speaking light language. So all of this would happen within 9 days.
What is the speaking of light language? I've never heard of that before.
Light language, and I know that's they talk about it a lot here in the US and around light language. In some churches and some religions, they call it like speaking in tongues, where you speak this language like I've heard it even referenced to as like a spiritual language that it's not actual words or it's just like sounds. It's like a frequency, can be used for healing. But light language is what you would call, a lot of people would know it as like speaking in tongues and speaking in this different language. But it has a frequency to it, and it can be used for healing. Some people say it's for activation, some for blessings, but it has a large healing component to help clear stuck energies and blockages in people. So it can be used in that way as a healing modality. But I started doing that, and I didn't understand that then. And that I was like, I don't want to. I started realizing I was working with that higher power, that greater. These energies were coming to me and working through me. So I kept doing my writings, and I was told that in like 6 months I would start drawing for spirit, and that's what happened. 6 months later, I started getting these images and impressions coming to me, and I would start drawing these pictures and images and impressions, and started finding out that I could draw people's departed loved ones. And so that happened 6 months later. So all of this was going on. And it was just like, we didn't know what to do with it. But my husband looked up somebody for intuitive development. He's like, let's try this and see if it helps. And we ended up going like that later that year in the spring, because his mother passed away. So we had another death to deal with. But after that, and it was like every time we had a death in the family, my abilities got stronger and opened up even more. So we ended up going to that intuitive development class, and we talked to the Reverend that was there. And I'll never forget her. She was just such the sweetest lady and such a blessing. But we told her everything was going on. She sat down, she talked, she heard everything. And all. She's like, oh, she said, sweetie, you're not going cuckoo berries and you're not weird. She said, you have a gift and you need to share it with the world. And she happened to be a vocal channel, trance channel also. So it was funny that synchronicities that we linked up with someone that I was doing that. And she said she hadn't met anyone else that could do what she did until she met me. And so she was explaining to me what it was and trying to help me with it. I didn't feel comfortable with that part. So I was just like, I don't want to do that. So I focused more on the writings. And that was when I started getting all these writings, themes, thoughts coming to me. At first, it was through automatic writing, but it was one day I had this big epiphany that I was sitting thinking of my list of things to do for my son. And then all of a sudden I started getting these other thoughts. It was like two sets of thoughts started coming into my mind. And I started thinking, I was like, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking about things, diapers and bottles and all these things. And now I'm thinking like these big universe, like high level thoughts. And it hit me in that moment. I'm like, someone is communicating with me. I'm having two sets of thoughts at the same. Somebody's talking to me, somebody outside of me. And then it's just like, I heard this in my spiritual ears, these applause go off. And I heard, you finally understand. Now we don't have to use your hands anymore. We can send you blocks of thought and you can write what we send you. And
wow.
And that was the experience. And that, Jason, leads into, that was the point where I then I would just start hearing these beautiful, loving conversations, these thoughts being sent to me like telepathically. I'd get pencil and start writing them down. And I start writing and writing and writing and writing. And so these writings started coming to me regularly. And after we met with the Reverend, and she was saying, you need to set up a YouTube, a Facebook, a website, whatever, you just share these messages with the world. Don't hide them. They're not meant for you. They're meant to be shared with the world. And so I was like, okay. But after we had met with her, it was about 4 months. I was still unsure what to do. I was like, I'm Catholic. This isn't a Catholic church. What do I do with this? This is straight. How do I had to reconcile being Catholic and everything I grew up, my whole belief system I was based on, with these new experiences that were coming up. So it took a while, quite a while for me to get there. But my husband was like, set up the website, like she said, start posting these things. And that's where, when we fast forward to the book that you see today, it started back then.
The book. This leads beautifully on to the book. The book's called A Place of Love and Light, and I must admit, I've been going through this book, and it is absolutely beautiful. Tell us about the book and how it's come about, and how would you describe the book, Ellen?
Okay, well, the book started based back off of where I just said it started back then. That was 2013. And I started posting these writings every week and sometimes, that were coming to me up on the website. And I told my husband, I was like, well, these are just writings. Nobody's going to come look at this. I'm like, we're putting it up on the website. There's no services or anything. And he's like, just do it. We'll do it. And I started noticing that people were going out and looking. The visitors to the site started picking up. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I was like, these writings must have a draw. So I kept posting and posting, and we kept noticing people were looking. And every time when there were world events or something that would happen, I would see the number go up on this website that I was told intuitively. The impressions I get is at the top of the site, you'll see "Welcome to a Place of Love and Light." That was the name I was given back then. That's the name you'll see on the book, because it's a collection of all the writings that I was posting there and additional ones. But I took all those, it's like 10 years worth of writings, and put them all into this book, because last year was like the 10-year anniversary. And at the beginning of the year, I learned through this whole process, like what we talked about at the beginning, that when I'm getting those nudges and those hits, I follow them. I've learned to trust that I'm being guided by something outside of myself, because every time I followed it, it's paid off. And I think that's the biggest thing, is people learning how to trust it. But at the beginning of last year, I always knew at some point it would be a book, but I hadn't got myself, especially being mom and different things, still trying to juggle multiple balls. I hadn't done it. But last year, to be January, it's always January. It's like the month that's that big epiphany changing month.
Yeah.
I felt like at the beginning of the month, it was like for about 8 days, I was just put into this kind of a trance-like state. And it was like, get this book together. It needs to be out in the world. And so I started pulling all this information together, pulling all the writings in the book, putting some new writings in. And that's kind of in making this collection, because I was guided to and felt like this was the time the world needed to see this book now. And so that's how this all came about. It was just me getting quiet, being led. It was following these blocks of thoughts, this information that was coming to me. And at one point I was told, like, I was getting the name the Masters, that I was working with this collective group of energies called the Masters, who were watching over Earth and sending loving guidance to help chart a better path forward for Earth and for humanity. And that's the information. That's what I was getting. So for me, through all this time, it was learning to trust. And like I said, reconcile my belief system, and realizing that what I was dealing with was bigger than just a religion. It was like spiritual laws of the universe. So, and the spiritual laws of the universe aren't tied to any particular religion, but they govern all religions. They govern everything. So, because religions, if the heart of a religion is to take everyone back to being a loving, kind person, to be their best, whatever religion it is, if that's at the center of it all, love and compassion and empathy and forgiveness, all those things. It doesn't matter what religion anybody practices. A religion is a community. And if that helps you to get to that place of being love and light and compassion, then you follow the community that gets you there, as long as you get to that place.
I think this goes back to what we spoke about at the start, about how your religion, from your story, I feel that was your vessel for belief that led you on the path that you did. So, and I think what you're saying about religion is exactly right. This is deeper than religion. And that's only a realization that I've had myself recently. It's only something that I've kind of come to realize in recent months. So honestly, I think the book, like you just said, it is so profound. And when I've been going through it, I found that this book is the sort of book where it's more like a companion than a book, because it's got some of the things in there are so profound. I would have to sit there and read it 2-3 times. And every time I read it, it's almost like a little bit more of a nugget of information comes in, because you read it through one perspective, but then I found myself read the same bit 2 weeks later and come up, something totally different has come to me as a result of it. So I was saying to you at the start of this, before we went into the recording, but this is a book where, give this a few years, all the pages will be bent. It'll have coffee stains all over it because it's one of those books you just want to keep going back to. And normally, a good book with me because it's got pen all in it. It's got highlights. It's got warped pages. That's the sign of a good book. So to anyone that wants to get this, I can't recommend it enough. It's on Amazon, A Place of Love and Light, and well worth the money. So to move on, I want to talk about a few other things. Now, you founded Highly Intuitive Kids Community. Now, tell us about this, because this is interesting.
Yeah, this is, and I'm glad you've asked about that, because that actually ties into, even with the book and all of this ties together. Before I started pulling this book together, in which this book really has been a 10-year journey, but actually formally getting it together to be published last year, in 2022, I was guided to start the Highly Intuitive Kids effort. Now, this kind of cycles back to with my son. My son at a very young age. So as I was opening and going through my 9 days and everything was opening for me, my son at 2 was also talking about, he was also opening. His abilities were there. And
Wow.
I'd never seen it in a child before. So our family was going through, I'm opening and he's having these experiences and I'm trying to figure out me and we're trying to figure out how to help him. And we just went on this whole metaphysical, mystical just journey, because at 2, he started talking about past lives. He started talking, he was like 2 years old. He just started talking and he was so afraid of emergency vehicles going by the house and he would just get panicked. Sometimes he'd just wake up and he's out of breath, just panicked. And one night I was like, we were talking and he's finally calmed down. He started opening up and he said, Mom, he said, these bad men were chasing me. Now he's 2, he doesn't watch TV. He never watched TV. We didn't let him, he's too young at that point for us to have him watching television. Mom, these bad men were chasing me. And they chased me. I ran into a building. He said the building was on fire. And he said, I went in there and he said, my body died, but I didn't. He said, you and Dad were there, but you weren't you and Dad. He said, but I went to the nowhere place. And he said, and I stayed there and I waited. He said, and I waited to come back to be to you. And he said, to you and Dad, to be your son. And he was telling us about these, like, a lifetime before he was born about what happened. And we were just sitting there like, oh my gosh, we didn't know about past lives at that point. But as I'm opening and starting to research and understand things, I started hearing that from him. He started talking about past lives. Then one night he was, okay, so after my son was telling us about this experience of before he was born, we were just amazed. My husband and I were looking at each other and it's like, wow, what do we do with this? We didn't know what you do with it, but we knew he was talking about something that he was too young. It's like, this is past life. So that prompted us to do more research. But then there was another time when that he had another experience because my mother had passed when he was 3.5 months old. And one night he didn't like going to bed, but he was racing upstairs to go to bed. And we were like, why are you racing upstairs to go to bed? And he's like, well, I want to go to bed because Grandma comes to play ball with me at night. And I was just like, oh, wow. So I knew my mom was coming to him at night. I'm thinking in dreams, she's coming to play with him. So that touched my heart. It's like when she said she'd be around, I was like, that made me feel good. But he just started having these other experiences. And then it was 3.5. When he was about 3, my father-in-law passed away. And that's when he stopped being able to sleep at night. And sleep in his own room. He started coming to us and telling us he was scared. And we're like, why can't you sleep in your room? He's like, because Grandpa's in my room. He's like, he comes to visit, he's staying in my room. And then as I started researching and understand more, and then I went in there and I just started praying. And I was like, he can see you. He can sense you. You have to, please don't be around because it's scaring him. But I didn't know what I was doing. I just felt like that's what I needed to do. But that was, so my son's abilities, he started getting more sensitive and all these things were happening. When he started into school, he he actually had gotten bullied at school at one point because he was going to school talking about we'd have some conversation at home because we knew he had the sensitivity, but we didn't know how to help him. But one day he comes home and he's like, Mom, I was trying to tell the kids that we're multidimensional beings, but they don't understand. They're laughing at it. And I was like, yeah, sweetie, you're 8, 9 years old. You can't tell them. They don't. I was like, they don't know what that means. I was like, they're adults who don't know what multidimensional means. I was like, so you can talk like that at home, but not at school, because people will just think you're weird. So don't, yeah, it's like, it's not that anything's wrong with it. I was like, I just don't want you getting teased. But he was taking that, like with us telling him not to talk about these experiences. He's like, but this is who I am, that there was something wrong with him. And we didn't want him to take it that way, but we didn't know how to help him. So we just, all these experiences, long story, cut it short for you, we ended up trying to find a way to help him. And once again, following the synchronicities, I was praying. I was like, God, I need some way to help him. I don't know what to do. This is all new for us. We don't know where to start. You can't go to the doctor and talk to him about it. You can't go, you can't just call. Who do you go? What do you do? And so I got an email, came into my inbox for a casting call for Psychic Kids show on A&E. And it just happened to appear in my inbox from a woman who just sent it out. And I said, you know what? I'm going to apply for this. I was like, but I knew intuitively, I was like, there's no mistakes. When I see something like that just came out of nowhere to my attention, I'll apply for it. I applied for it because we weren't worried about being on the show. We were trying to find help for our son because we didn't know where to turn to work with this. So we said, well, so I signed up for it and I told my husband about it. And we put our information in, and like 2 weeks later, it went from, the producer sent me a note back like 2 hours later. And then from that time frame, they brought us in, they talked to us, they interviewed our son. You have to go through a whole vetting process. They make sure the child actually has abilities before they put him on the show. But it was like 2 weeks. And they told us, we want to have you on the show. And so from after that point, it was like 2 months later, the camera crews were out at our house filming. So ended up being on the Psychic Kids show. And that was such a help because they brought in this was a version where the kids who were previously on the show grew up and were helping the next generation. And
wow.
Brian Michaels was Ethan's tutor and helper. And so the cast came in and they have a child psychologist here. So they have all the supports, but they were able to help us identify that Ethan had a lot of gifts that we didn't understand how sensitive he was and how things came out during that experience. But after that experience was over, we still had to figure out what to do and how to help Ethan, because it is right. But he's an adult now. So he's in his 20s. And he helped Ethan for the show, and they put Ethan in different situations where they tested his abilities, and it was aired. Our episode was called "The Ghost in the Bed" on A&E's Psychic Kid. We were in the premiere episode of the show, and so
the kid in the bed. I'll have a look at that.
The Ghost in the Bed.
Oh, the ghost.
The ghost in the bed. That was the episode. Oh. And so, but after that, we had to still figure out a way to help him. So and knowing that there were 15 other families across the country that was dealing with this. And I just kept feeling like there needs to be more to this. And it dove me into much more research because I'm still trying to figure, how do we help Ethan, give him ongoing support? What do we do? And I was like, I was feeling pulled and led that I needed to start something. I needed to do something to help, because if it was our son and 15 other families, there's got to be more out there. You want me to keep going?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there has to be others out there. So there was a period where it was like 3 weeks. I kept waking up at 3:30 in the morning. I kept being woke up 3:30 in the morning. Get up. And I started being given guidance on, you need to put together a website. And this is some of the information for it. You need to start a Facebook group and a Facebook community. So I set up the website. I was guided to set up the website and the Facebook group after 3 weeks of just being woken up in the middle of the night and receiving this information. And at this point, I just know that I follow what I'm being given. And so we did that. I set that up in 2022. And we've got members from around the world who've joined the Facebook group, and people coming in and looking at the website, and it just warmed my heart because I knew it's like, it's not just our family, it's not just the people around the world, that there are kids everywhere. There are, and even adults that have this heightened intuition and have this sensitivity that just aren't understood. And part of what I feel that I've been guided is to have conversations, set up supports for parents, caregivers, educators, other professionals. And we have some of all of those in our parent community, in the highly intuitive kids parent community, who are coming and trying to understand. They're saying, yes, we're recognizing that there are kids with this heightened sensitivity, and how can we support them? And so we set up that network to help.
What an amazing thing to do. How many children have kind of come into contact with it now?
Well, now the group is for parents. It's not for kids, but it's to help educate the parents and for teachers. But we do have, we try to have activities at times to bring kids in, but we really want to educate the parents and the adults, because the more we can educate them, then they better know how to parent them.
Well, I suppose it's the adults you need to get to, not the children. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and actually last year too, I was able to partner up with a woman who she's the owner of this called the Illuminate Festivals, where she takes and she does festivals up and down like the East Coast and across some of the U.S., bringing intuitive readers and metaphysical, information fairs, like psychic fairs, but it's not called psychic fairs. She calls them wellness fairs, to people to experience these different alternative modalities and these holistic techniques as an option. So we partnered up with her, and so we went around, and we're going to be doing the same thing this year, to different local communities, holding workshops, talking about the signs of a highly intuitive child and how to support them. And it's been amazing because we've gotten counselors, we've gotten teachers, we've gotten parents open to hearing this. And we're just trying to start normalizing the conversation, raising awareness, and opening people up. Because a big thing is, for me, is that I've seen is like the school systems and teachers do an incredible job, and they try to help as best they can. But our school systems are not set up for intuitive learners.
No.
They're not. And that's what hurts some of these children, because they get misunderstood in school. They get mislabeled, because some of them can be mislabeled as having like ADD or ADHD, and it's not really the case. It's because they're sensitive and they experience the school environment differently, or they learn differently than your logical linear learner. And so, and we've had that even with with Ethan. He can make big leaps in his thinking. And so sometimes we'll get, he doesn't put the details in his work. But it's like, because he gets in. I always say that our intuitive children, they learn, the linear learners learn ABC 1, 2, 3. Our intuitive learners go ABC XYZ. Because
everything you're describing, Ellen, is like me at school. The way I learn, I sometimes just want to know the start and the end, and I can really relate to that.
Yeah.
Out of interest, Ethan is in his 20s now.
No, my son, he's only 13 now.
Oh, 30. Okay. So is he still having those kind of experiences, or has it sort of simmered out a bit, or where's he at in his kind of experience with this sort of thing now?
Well, right, he still has his experiences, but he's at that age, and our kids, the highly intuitive, they go through different stages. But when they hit that puberty teen stage, a lot of times, quite a few of them try, and he's like, "Mom, I'm just trying to fit in." So he's like, he knows they're there, but he's trying to push them away because he's just trying to be like the other kids. But and that's fine. They go through that stage where they may deny it for a few years because they want to try and be like their peers. But he knows that when he's ready to really embrace them, and the thing is, they never go away. That's all I was telling you. They're never going to go away. You just learn how to work with them. But if you want to just kind of put them aside for right now, just to try and have that quote unquote normal experience, that's fine. But when you're ready for it, we will jump back into it. And you can have those conversations with me and your dad, and we'll work through it. So he's at that stage right now. He's just trying to fit in, but he knows they're there. So he's not working with them. But he knows at some point he's not going to be.
How amazing, though, at that age to know that you've got this ability to tap into that. And, you know, it might be, Ellen, he follows in the same footsteps with his career and finds that he suddenly catapults up the career ladder in super speed, probably because of it, because he's got this ability to really understand his intuition.
But, you know, Jason, I have to say, anybody and any child and anybody can do that. And that's the key, is you use it, whatever your vocation, whatever you're feeling called to, whatever you may be doing, you use it there, because it's going to help you to be the best in that situation. And so I'll just tell you this real quick thing is because with the highly intuitive kids, I've had guest speakers come in, and we've even had some of our community members to share their stories, because the more you're sharing stories within the community, people can see that they're not alone and they've had similar experiences. So it's not so strange. But I had this one gentleman who he had his gift from young age. And I interviewed him for sharing our stories. And he talked about how he didn't, and I always say, not everybody wants to be like a medium or a psychic, you know, doing readings for people. And I love the interview I did with him, because he said that. He's like, I didn't want to use it in that way, but I always knew I had this gift. But he started a business, kind of like what I was talking about, how I used mine in my business profession. He started a business where he actually uses his gifts to help tap in, to help other businesses figure out who's the right person to hire, what's the best business strategy for how they lay out their work processes. And now he taps into that using his gift to help people position their businesses.
I have heard about this. Someone was telling me about this the other day, whereby some businesses bring in people under the kind of banner of being a coach, but it's such an ambiguous title that they've got mediums in there kind of advising, and it makes total sense. Ellen, this honestly has been the most fascinating conversation. We could have easily spoken for a whole nother hour on so many different things, but I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on to the show, because I think you have literally given our audience here a treasure trove of stories, insights, pearls of wisdom, and it's been lovely. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Now, wasn't that just the most amazing conversation? Some good news. Ellen's actually going to be coming back on in a couple of months' time to actually do an episode all about how to parent highly intuitive children from her own experience and from all of the experience that she's also got from founding the Highly Intuitive Kids community. So if you're a parent to a highly intuitive child, Ellen is going to do a whole episode on this, and it's absolutely fascinating. A big thank you for joining me on another enlightening episode of Soul Sync. If you want to stay in the loop with the Soul Sync podcast, it's easy. Simply hit the follow show button wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and by following me, you really are supporting this podcast, as it allows me to continue to get world-class speakers onto the show. If you enjoy my podcast, could I ask a favour? Please take a moment to leave a review wherever you tune in. Your feedback means the world to me. Not only do I love reading your comments, but it also makes it easier for others to find the Soul Sync. A big thank you in advance. If you want to get involved in the conversation with our community, as well as hearing from me with off-podcast content, look at the bottom of the show notes where you'll find my Facebook page and newsletter function. If you have suggestions for future episodes, or there's a guest you'd love to see featured, or if you have a story you'd like to share with our wonderful audience, or you might even like to be a guest, simply email me at hello@jasonpaulmedium.com. Your stories and ideas are the heartbeat of Soul Sync, and your input is invaluable in shaping the soulful conversations I bring to you. I'm Jason Paul. You have been listening to the Soul Sync. Until next time, goodbye.